There we go. Okay, let's recap chapter 8, since that was Friday. We find out that Naya's little sister was sick from drinking unclean water. That is the whole almost mission of this book, is that they're walking to find clean water. And then Salva, they make it to the island, which is the middle of the Nile River, and then they try to go across to the other side, which is what we call the shore. All right, so let's see. Chapter 9. Naya's family had been back in the village for several months the day the visitors came. In fact, it was nearly time to leave for camp again. As the jeep drove up, most of the children ran to meet it. Shy about meeting strangers, Naya hung back. Two men emerged from the jeep. They spoke to the biggest boys, including Naya's brother, Deb, who led them to the home of the village's chief, his and Naya's uncle. The chief came out of the house to greet the visitors. They sat in the shade of the house with some of the other village men and drank tea and talked for a while. What are they talking about? Naya asked Deb. Something about water, Deb replied. Water? The nearest water was the pond, of course, half a morning's walk away. Anyone could have told them that. Okay, so if we go back real quick. Okay, yeah, so really, all we can really write for Naya, that's it, that's her whole chapter, is we can just write that, yeah, visitors come to her village. Let's write that. Visitors come to her village.
The story is mostly about, like, Salva.
Yeah. Okay. Visitors come to her village. Okay. The last line of Salva's chapter on Friday, it said, ahead lay the most difficult part of their journey, the Akobo Desert. Yes. Remember I showed you on the map where that was. The Akobo Desert. So here they are right there. Okay, here we go. Salva had never seen anything like the desert. Around his village, Lonarik, enough grass and shrubs grew to feed the grazing cattle. There were even trees. But here in the desert, nothing green could survive, except tiny evergreen acacia bushes, which somehow endured the long winter months with almost no water. Uncle said it would take 3 days to cross the Akobo. Salva's shoes stood no chance against the hot, stony desert ground. The soles, made from rubber tire treads, had already been reduced to shreds, held together with a little leather and a great deal of hope. After only a few minutes, Salva had to kick off the flapping shreds and continue barefoot. The first day in the desert felt like the longest day Salva had ever lived through. The sun was relentless and eternal. What does that mean? The sun was relentless and eternal. Maddox?
The sun was like not caring and it was like going forever.
Perfect. When you are relentless, you don't give up. Like toddlers and like little small children, like you are relentless to get what you want. And then eternal means like forever. Says there was neither a wisp of cloud nor a whiff of breeze for relief. Each minute of walking in that arid heat felt like an hour. So a minute felt like an hour. Even breathing became an effort. Every breath Salva took seemed to drain strength rather than restore it. Thorns gored his feet. His lips became cracked and parched. Uncle cautioned him to make the water in his gourd last as long as possible. It was the hardest thing Salva had ever done, taking only tiny sips when his body cried out for huge gulps of thirst-quenching, life-giving water. The worst moment of the day happened near the end. Salva stubbed his bare toe on a rock, and his whole toenail came off. The pain... I don't need that in my video. The pain was terrible. Salva tried to bite his lip, but the awfulness of that never-ending day was too much for him. He lowered his head, and the tears began to flow. Soon he was crying so hard that he could hardly get his breath. He could not think. He could barely see. He had to slow down, and for the first time on the long journey, he began to lag behind the group. What does it mean to lag? Bree?
Like lazy.
Yeah, well, not being lazy, but it kind of makes you go, like in your computer lags, slows down. Stumbling about blindly, he did not notice the group drawing farther and farther ahead of him. So he's almost like just delirious, and they're just getting he's going so slow, he can't see. Like he's just so hot and so tired and in pain. And the group is just getting farther and farther away. As if by magic, Uncle was suddenly at his side. Salva Mawin Dut Arik, he said, using Salva's full name loud and clear. Salva lifted his head, and the sobs interrupted by surprise. Do you see that group of bushes? Uncle said, pointing. You need only to walk as far as those bushes. Can you do that, Salva Mawin Dut Arik? Salva wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. He could see the bushes. They did not look too far away. Uncle reached into his bag. He took out a tamarind and handed it to Salva. I think it's just another, like a fruit. Chewing on the sour, juicy fruit made Salva feel a little better. When they reached the bushes, Uncle pointed out a clump of rocks ahead and told Salva to walk as far as the rocks. After that, a lone acacia, another bush, another clump of rocks, a spot bare of everything except sand. Uncle continued this way for the rest of the walk. What was Uncle doing? What was Uncle doing? Shh, raise your hands. You ready?
He kept on telling him to walk to one thing so that he could actually walk.
Yeah, like little small chunks, like little. He's like just go to that door. Okay, just make it to that next classroom. Okay, he's doing it little by little.
Yeah,
He continued in this way for the rest of the walk. Each time he spoke to Salva using his full name. Each time Salva would think of his family and his village, and he was somehow able to keep his wounded feet moving forward one painful step at a time. At last the sun was reluctantly forced from the sky. A blessing of darkness fell across the desert, and it was time to rest. The next day was a precise copy of the one before. The sun and the heat, and worst of all, Salva's mind. A landscape that was utterly unchanged. The same rocks, the same acacias, the same dust. There was not a thing to indicate that the group was making any progress at all across the desert. It just kept looking the same. Salva felt as if he had walked for hours while staying in exactly the same place. The fierce heat sent up shimmering waves that made everything look wobbly. Or was he the one who was wobbling? That large clump of rocks up ahead, it almost seemed to be moving. It was moving. It wasn't rocks at all. It was people. Salva's group drew nearer. Salva counted 9 men. All of them collapsed on the sand. One made a small, desperate motion with his hand. Another tried to raise his head but fell back again. None of them made a sound. As Salva watched, he realized that 5 of the men were completely motionless. One of the women in Salva's group pushed forward and knelt down. She opened her container of water. "What are you doing?" a man called. "You cannot save them." The woman did not answer. When she looked up, Salva could see the tears in her eyes. She shook her head and then poured a little water onto a cloth and began to wet the lips of each one of the men in the sand. Salva looked at the hollow eyes and the cracked lips of the men lying on the hot sand, and his own mouth felt so dry that he nearly choked when he tried to swallow. "If you give them your water, you will not have enough for yourself," the voice shouted. "It is useless. They will die, and you will die with them." I know. Okay. Alright, so that was pretty intense. So that sounds like the first part of the really most difficult part of the walk, where people are beginning to lose their lives. So I can fit one more tiny thing down here, and then I'm going to have to go to the back of my page. So you do what you need to do. Crossing Akobo Desert. I'm going to say very difficult. Men dying. I know it's hard to see. Men dying.